on the East server. That is where the best of the best of the best hung out all day. If you wanted a game with good people, you try to join. Normally couldn't. Normally full. 40 people. Ooh. Channels hit its maximum capacity. Couldn't join. I would sometimes sit in an empty channel just trying to join X17, because if I got in there and 1v1 someone, I knew I would eventually be against the best of the best of the best of StarCraft players. So eventually I ended up getting into X17 and playing with all those people, and I actually started using my my keyboard. And this was around when I was an 8th grader going into freshman year of high school. I actually used the keyboard now. No hotkeys. I didn't use like Control 1, Control 3. I used SH to help that mass Hydralisk strategy I was talking about earlier. I didn't use SM because, man, M sure is really far across the keyboard. I'm not going to have any of that. Happily just stuck with, you know, SH and SZ and SD because, you know, I was pretty set on Zerg at that point in time. And now I'm actually starting to get to where the real 1v1 players are. You know, players like First Tsunami, if you guys remember this. Rekroll existed back then, except he played under the name 88 Lurker. In Control existed back then. There were strong players like Pillars. God, who are some other names? Agent 911. Jolly were some other good players. Oh, God, there was one, it's on the tip of my tongue. Who is that player? Blackish Red, that's right. Blackish Red. The first ever big tournament my brother and I tried to qualify for was the World Cyber Games Challenge. Not the first World Cyber Games that happened in 2001, but like the 1999-2001, when like the KBK tournaments were running, when players like GG99 Slayer and Elky were very, very strong foreigners. And I remember my brother was invited to the Blackish clan. He was Blackish Gold, and he got really far in the tournament, and he lost, and he was like horribly upset and everything. And it's so funny to think about the way that strategies worked back then. You know, by the way, I just want to briefly interject and note that my camera seems to be doing weird things to the color, so I'm actually going to see if I can adjust this. Okay, it seems like it'll be a little more stable now. Sincerest apologies. But like, okay, so these were the strategies that we faced back then. Here was a standard strategy in Zerg vs. Terran. I 9-pool you, and I build a hatchery in your base, and I sunken push you. Because think about it. Terran only has Marines then, and no one's going to check their ramp. No. You have to get a force and then move to secure your ramp. And of course, everyone's now playing Lost Temple around these days. So, you know, you do this a lot. What are some other like weird, nutty strategies? Like one base Corsair Reaver against Zerg was unstoppable. Nick and I improved it to one base Reaver Scout because the Scout does so much more damage than the Corsair. Why would you make anything but a Scout? So we did Scout Corsair a lot. This is a time when my alias was Sleeping Drone, if any of you are familiar with this. And after a while, Nick and I actually started to get decently okay compared to other people at the time. I mean, my strategies were still like one-hatch Lurker versus Terran, which, by the way, was standard. And I think it's important to stop and to note how my mindset's working at this stage, because players still experience this all the time as they're, you know, joining the StarCraft community. So think about my Mutalisk thing. That was my trick. I just had a trick. And when someone was able to defeat my trick, I just got pissed and would try it again and be like, oh, I still hope it's working. And as I branched out to more diverse strategies, I would go, I used to Mutalisk Rush, but now I know better. I still didn't ever deviate from that trick methodology. My question was always, what is the right strategy in this spot? And I would abandon everything else that I had. No, the plan was gone, nothing, just like, what do I think he would not expect now? So for instance, I just started out going this Mutalisk Rush, but then I expanded to do things like Lurker drop people. I would one-hatch Lurker Rush, and you have just enough gas to get the transport upgrade for Overlords and 2 Lurkers, and you lift them up and float them into his base and run straight to his mineral line. That was my whole strategy. What else did I have? I had, in Terran vs. Terran, building a factory and floating it into his base without him expecting and making vultures to kill him. I would Dark Templar rush. I would just do every sort of weird rush, gimmicky thing imaginable, and I thought that that made me a good player because I was doing these wildly different things. And I eventually slowly gravitated towards 9-pooling every single game in every single matchup. 9 pooling with speed. And, you know, that sounds gimmicky, but what I was finding with it is that I could have a next step in the play. I had follow-ups. I was able to get Mutalisks really fast. I could expand. I could snipe probes. I could distract him and all this stuff. And I remember for the World Cyber Games, like the first one in 2001, I actually got to put all this to use, right? I'd been practicing in Clan X17, where the best of the best hung out. And I worked on this 9-pool strategy. I even sometimes logged on the Scary Europe server to some channel whose name I can't remember anymore. You just had to somehow know that these channels existed. And what I would do is, or when the 2001 World Cyber Games was announced, they had this online tournament bracket system, and the top 3 of the entire qualifier would be flown out to Los Angeles to compete in the finals. And once again, remember that I live in Kansas. And other than that, anyone who wanted to participate in the qualifying finals could. All you had to do was show up. But you could get these tickets out. So Nick and I trained for this. And I remember I played 3 games. I had to go to my friend's house because Nick and I didn't have 2 working computers. We had like 1.5 working computers. It was pretty much that laptop that I mentioned earlier. And other times, you know, our main computer just sort of bit the dust. So I had to drive to a friend's house, and I remember I had 3 Protosses in a row. The first player, I can't even remember his name, but I 9-pooled him, and I just won straight up with the 9-pool. The second player I played was actually Blue Wolf, who is one of those names that's stuck around in the Starcraft or in the competitive RTS scene for ages. I mean, he's been in like Dawn of War and like Age of Empires and all this stuff, and now see him in Starcraft II. But I remember I beat Blue Wolf with my 9-pool, and I was feeling really good. And then I had to play against Jolly, who's one of those players that if you go to the Battle.net old tournament write-ups, he's there in those starting tournaments that had like XDS Gur and B-Blade Leader, these legend names. He was in some of those tournaments, and I had to play him. And I remember I just was so focused with my little 9-pool, my stupid little gimmick. And I microed around his base, and I even counted. I killed like 16 probes with the initial 9-pool. And of course, I kept these Lings alive in his base forever. And then I got Mutalisks and killed another 12, 13 probes, just darting in and out. And then when I did my final push, I rushed all my lurkers to his expo, and I killed 25 probes in one shot. I literally won by harassing to death, and I felt so clever, and I qualified for the second day of play. And of course, I played a guy named Wizard, who was really good and just demolished me, and it wasn't even close. But, you know, it was just a really good experience for me to you know, get that excitement, you know, get that adrenaline of, oh my god, I have a strategy, I executed it, and it worked. It wasn't well developed at all. It was just, oh, I hope I get up his ramp, because if I don't, I guess I lost, and I guess I'll have to find another opponent. But I started doing something at that point in time that has always stuck with me as one of like the centerpieces of my mindset, which is there was a player named Jello1. And there was a Jello clan who had players like Jello Pud as well. And the Jello clan were ultra notorious hackers. Oh my god, did they ever hack a ton. I mean, some of them are probably still around hacking as well. But they started this sort of like, now, you know, you see this all the time, but it was like new era trolling, where, you know, they would blatantly hack, you know, like you would move a dropship along the edge of the map, and they would just have no observers, take 12 Dragoons, wander right over there, kill it, and then move back. You'd be like, how'd you see it? And he's like, I thought it was coming. You know, just like always, never, ever saying to anyone that they hacked, just always being like, no, dude, I'm totally innocent here, you know? And back then, if you map hacked, I mean, as you're hearing with me describe these strategies, 9-pool to hatch rush in your base, if you have a map hack where you can see what someone's doing, you get an unbelievable advantage. It's obviously going to be the biggest help in the world. But I remember I played against him, and I mean, this is a little bit of my gullibility then. I remember saying, well, you know what? If he says he's not hacking, then I'm just going to believe that he's not hacking. And we ended up just playing a lot of games